I was in a rainbow realm. Now it was blackness everywhere, but it was like ribbons of rainbow light, like as if I was in a pool of rainbow energy. And there was this gentleman there with a white beard and white hair. He was bronze, had a golden chest piece and a white robe. And there is a golden temple and a paved golden walkway up to it. And we walk up there and we get into this section of this temple complex. A golden tablet about this big that was levitating about 5 foot off the ground, and my whole room was lit up and there was script on it. This tablet's there with script flashing a million miles an hour with the rainbow energy coming out into my consciousness. Happened for another 5, 10, 15 seconds and it imploded on itself.
Hey everyone, and welcome to First Contact with Eesha Patel. And today's incredible guest is Pete Slattery. You may also know him as Peter Maxwell Slattery. He's got a number of books and things out there. He also now has a sanctuary where he brings people to really experience CE5 contact. And so we're really excited to get into today the topic of contact. We're going to hear a little bit about Pete's story, how he got started into all of this, and then we're also going to have a little meditation at the end, so stick around for that, and we'll try and actually do some practical work towards the end of the show as well today. Welcome, Pete. It's so glad to have you here.
Eesha, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, of course. And first of all, you're based in Australia like me, which is wonderful. Whereabouts in the Aussie land are you?
So I'm about 30 minutes west of Albury, so near a town called Rutherglen. I'm sort of between Rutherglen and Corowa on the Murray River.
Okay.
So it's sort of like a area known as Carlisle. It hasn't even got a post office, but Rutherglen's only 5 minutes away. So northeast Victoria.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, I think there's quite a few groups there that do stuff. Are you quite involved with the community there in
No,
the
see,
area?
when I came out, oh, it would be 15 years ago, I came out, there was really nobody doing anything in this area, which is when I started investigating and helping a lot of people because there was just no one in the area. So I don't really work with any groups or any people. I do work with James Gilliland and ESETI, and there's just a handful of people that have been seen in my films that really is just the type family that I work with after that many years in the community. So I try to not actually be a part of this community, as weird as that sounds. It's just I like to do my own thing and yeah, just cruise along doing that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, beautiful. And so first of all, before we get into all the cool experiences you've had, how did you first get started?
So I've been an experiencer since about 7 years old, give or take. There's a few things before that, but I was having experiences commonly on a regular basis between the ages of 8 and 12. There was telepathy going on at 7, which I didn't understand it was telepathy. But I would come to in my room with what looks like greys, but they're actually white, and their skin texture would be more like a cigarette ash, that sort of grainy texture. And later, I come to find out that they were light beings, years and years and years down the track. So that was just a front that apparently is the way to integrate me into sort of the contact that I was having, though it freaked me out at stages and got easier. But I also had my first UFO sighting at the age of 12 in Lavington, New South Wales, and that was broad daylight. It was like a disc, but more like a weight on the end of a weight bar. If you pull the weight off and you put it sideways, that's what it looked like. And it was a matte grey, and it cut in front of a hill called Red Light Hill in Lavington. It appeared about sort of more north than northeast, and it went west until out of view. And then on and off from then, I had sightings on and off, psychic and spiritual experiences, seeing shadow man spirits, things I didn't really connect the dots on back then. But it was around 2010 when things really got intense with the spate of sightings that I even went to the Australian Air Services about. I got on film, I had witnesses, and not long after that, I started having really close phenomena in the home in terms of blue orbs that appeared and eventually turned into these 7 foot tall light beings, as weird as that sounds. And let's just say 13 books later, a couple of documentaries and thousands of bits of footage and evidence, physical trace evidence as well. Uh, I'm sitting here with it continuing to this day.
Yeah, right. Wow. Why you?
I think there's a bigger plan at play for all of us. I think we all have a story. Let's just say I'm not 100% sure, to be quite honest. There's things that I've been told, and even, for example, John Vivanco, who's worked for agencies, he's a top remote viewer with the whole team that remote viewed me and said that pretty much there's only a handful of people like me genetically. And part of the experiences and why such a vast range of experiences with many different types of intelligences is because of we could say, an experiment of creating somebody, a handful of people that can operate multidimensionally while being in a physical experience and even be connected to source coherently while in a human experience state. Now, this is from nearly 40 remote viewers, blind on a target that came across this. And all I know is that I'm still learning a lot. I know a lot, but how much I know shows how much I don't know at the same time.
Mhm.
So it was, uh, a bit to be taken aback by that and what happens regularly in the contact experience is getting more intel, revelations, insight, and guidance. But see, where it really got intense in 2010 was at that time with the spate of sightings. I was just taking people out to see the crafts, and I knew when they would be there. Still to this day, there's some videos up online you can see right now, broad daylight, and the witness testimony of the people that were here. I just walked outside with the camera, looked up, and there it was, broad daylight, and everyone could see it. So I didn't know what CE5 was back then. I really used the term of initiating contact. I didn't know who Greer was except for the 2001 press club conference that was brought to my attention by my brother at the time. And the first person I really came across who I work closely with now is James Gilliland, that I had a vision of what I'd be doing here at the sanctuary without even knowing who they are or what they were doing. I just knew where I'd be going with this. So it's been quite a journey, and that's where it's led now through training and being disciplined in different yoga practices, meditation, remote viewing, NLP, hypnotherapy, that it's led to, let's say, gleaning tools and being trained and certified in many areas to sort of have the tools to help people with where they're at and move forward, because the tools for each individual is slightly different from the next person. So it's been all over the shop in terms of, the experiences and the revelations and the pathway that I think was paved out many years ago, but we're just going through the motions.
Yeah, right. Um, when you say DNA, so if we were to put you under a microscope and analyze your DNA, do you think it would be different, or are we talking more like etheric light code sort of stuff?
I don't know. I've got no idea. Look, what I will say is that there's been blood tests done that theorise my creatine levels are 2,000 times higher than most humans, and I only know a handful of abductees with that, what they say are abductees, I believe just contactees with that trait. I was meant to be half blind by my 20s. I now don't need glasses. If you see me on Ancient Aliens, even going back a couple of years, I needed glasses. I got 100% eyesight.
Wow.
I've been offered by institutes and governments. I do have the evidence. Those close to me and that are working with me have seen all the evidence for this, that wanted to basically test me and some of the top remote viewers, which I don't want who I am and what I can do to be weaponized. That's why I'm not going down that road. And some of the big names that everyone would know, that if I rattled them off, were involved in that in terms of wanting to test me. But that's the reason I'm not. But a lot of this is on video and captured here with what I can do, which I believe any of us can do naturally.
Yeah, right. So on your website and your YouTube channel, you do promote this idea that anyone can make contact, which we're a huge believer here at First Contact. We believe First Contact is right here, right now in your backyard. It's all the time, you know.
Yeah.
And also from my personal experiences as well. So, it's interesting because I've talked to other people who have this belief that they're hybrids, for example. And I think that sort of alludes to a similar thing of what you've said, where there's been some level of genetic modification, and therefore, as a result, they have quite a strong level of contact with their galactic families, right? So, so I wonder, on the one hand, yes, I believe everyone can make contact. On the other hand, is there some genetic modification or upgrades required to our body, or at the very least our energy field, in order for this to occur?
It's a case by case basis. It's not yes or no to that, like to answer that at all. To me, extraterrestrials, including us, are the bottom 5% of what's out there. I've gone to complete realms where there is no planets, where there's no stars, which is predominantly what it is out there when we go trans-dimensional.
Hmm.
Even we could say extraterrestrials in a higher state of consciousness, they're wanting to ascend to the next level. They may be evolved more than us or seem more evolved, but when we even get into genetics, and I've worked and talked with geneticists, so I know I'm not a geneticist myself, and our DNA can't be changed. There is cogs of wheels within our genetics that when they turn on, that's most likely the 99% that's dormant, or 90%, give or take. Again, I'm not a geneticist. The stuff that we talk about with DNA turned off, that's what starts to turn on. And we are a conglomerate of many different extraterrestrial races, even going extragalactic. We've got the Andromeda Galaxy next door, which there's a lot of contact going on with them for a lot of people. But it's even further than that. That one of the beings I've interfaced with comes from a galaxy near GNZ11, which is pretty much as far as we can see at the moment, from what I've been told. But it was like that's sort of the area ballpark where we're from. Then, of course, we've got, the Lyrians, the Pleiadians, Sirians, Arcturians, the list goes on. But then when we're talking about that, there is different forms of entities and intelligences that are operating within those spaces that can be ultra terrestrials on certain bodies that we, even if we went there, we couldn't see. Some we could. And some are just operating even in planets and stars in those systems that we can't even perceive because we're only seeing so much of the visible light spectrum in the electromagnetic spectrum. And so, in terms of the hybrid aspect, I think some people, yes, they've got tinkered with, they're working with their staff families. But to me, I think what usually happens down the track, and I've worked with thousands of people now, and I find this very common, is they start out thinking they're from a certain star system. But then when they realize, and again, I'm not shoving this down anyone's throat, but this is what I went through personally as well, is that you're from source, God, source, creator, whatever you want to term that, and that you're fractally living so many existences at the same time that somebody might say, as an example, I'm a ninth dimensional Pleiadian. Well, they're from source. They may totally resonate with the Pleiades because they've got multiple fractal existences experiencing the Pleiades simultaneously, that it feels more like home than any of the other existences going on. And
Hmm.
so this is where it was a lot to iterate, going, all right, there's the extraterrestrial component, but then there's what the interactions of the extraterrestrials that they've got going on too. What I mean by this is that there's still demons and angelic intelligences extraterrestrials have to deal with. There's still spirits. They too can get readings and deal psychically with trying to figure their own things out through intuition. So just because they're extraterrestrial doesn't mean they're enlightened. It's just meaning in some cases they're operating at a higher frequency. They're tapped more into that consciousness that encompasses all consciousness that we're tapped into. And so genetically, us as humans, one, we're a conglomerate of many different intelligences, and I believe we're carrying on the hybridization now. But on a soul level, we're all equal. If you go into that soul state, it's no one's more evolved than others. It's the experiences that pinhead, we could say the Godhead's experience, but even when that merges back to the spirit that encompasses all, I'm you and you're me. So we've got all the same knowledge, we've got all the same experiences. And that's where my stuff sort of lays mostly these days, is working on those levels of unbounded consciousness. Because if you can tap into that, that's the same space you can interface with the spirit, with an ET, with the Bigfoot, with the fairy, with an angel. It's all the same place. And
Yeah, I
so,
love it.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think you've articulated it so well. I feel like I know the concept, and the way that you've just said it, it just lands so beautifully in the way that you've so eloquently described the oneness. And I think, yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with everything you're saying, because like I do find that some people, they're able to connect with maybe just one being or one type of consciousness, whereas I know that it's possible for us to do all of it. Like I also connect with fairies and angelic and all the different realms as well. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. And also just to bring in a little bit of academia. So I've just started doing my PhD this year, my very first unit. I'm going to be the world's first person actually to have a PhD in intergalactic communications and diplomacy. So
Ooh.
that's a thing, right? Apparently. So yeah, so part of that course that I'm so fresh in, like weeks into this thing, and we're doing consciousness studies. And one thing that came that's really fascinating out of this is we go all the way right back to where consciousness first started. And they talk about the cephalopods, and even before that, like the really, really early fossils from just millions and millions of years ago. And it's really getting to the root of where does that consciousness begin as a form? Like where does that consciousness, how does it go from consciousness into something that experience, for example, a nervous system or a sensory sort of input and output? And so, in this book that I'm reading, there's this stuff in there about like the cephalopods and the jellyfish, who, if we go way, 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 way back, are actually our very, very distant, not so much ancestors, but kind of like the very primary biological life forms. And where I'm going with this, so there's two connection points here. One is there's the IC443 constellation, which for those who've listened to my podcast, I talk about this a lot. They're the jellyfish beings. They're actually one of the more non-human consciousnesses that are out there. And the other thing is, I want to sort of tie this to how would that relate to the experiences that you've had in these realms where there isn't like humans, there isn't a terrestrial kind of form. Do you think there's some connection? Do you think consciousness started off on this planet the same way in those formless forms that you see there? Or do you think that Earth has always had more of that sort of third dimensional density, even going as far back as, say, the octopi?
Um, it's very late again. I can't say one way or the other. I can tell you what I've experienced and what I know, but I can't prove. And what I'll say is that everything is consciousness and awareness, which goes into a vibratorial state, which is sound. Sound creates light, light creates matter, and it's all interchangeable. I was saying this and writing about this over a decade ago, and there's even scientists and people that have brought things to my attention that now those things are actually fact and interchangeable. So they know this now. Now, because of that, the way I can explain this is one of the main contacts I have are the Elohim.
Mhm.
The Elohim are nor male nor female. They they come in different colors and even as a rainbow energy, which is everything combined. Now, meaning if you follow the chakras up, even though there's 114 of them, let's work with just the basic 7. If you equate that to each density, you've got like red Elohim, orange Elohim, yellow, green, blue going up the chakras that are, we could say, the regulators of each domain, which is each density that's got their own planes and dimensions within that. Now, the way it was explained, and that's the blue light beings that were the blue orbs that manifested into this. So this is where there's a lot to go into. The way it was explained to me was that there are also another Elohim that they are the creator beings, that in God's mind, let's say, they put the stars where they are, the planetary bodies, the satellites to them, creating what we see from a light blueprint. And it's first done from sound. Then there's other Elohim that will go from the light blueprint into physicality with wherever it is that's going to have life. And when it's ripe enough for life in a certain way, they'll then turn into male, female, depending on the case, because some are androgynous and there's all different cases, of course. Again, it's not black and white, to where then they'll procreate for what we could say is new Elohim souls that come in and incarnate. The way it's explained to me is imagine my body is God, and each cell that makes up that body is you and I. We're the Elohim. We're all Elohim on the highest expression, up to the point that once we get to a certain level of consciousness, we can divide like a cell divides in two and create our own universe with its own planes and dimensions, with our own Elohim within our body going out within it to experience itself. That is what I know and what I've got intel on. And for me, it's what it is. I can't prove it, of course. It's just because there's a lot of recall, knowingness, and visuals with my experiences that even when I'm looking at them physically, if they appear physically, even though they're not corporeal in a liquid light blue energy state, I'm getting inner visions and the downloads, packets of information simultaneously with the experiences. And so that's sort of, I don't know if that can be measured. I don't know if that can be proven, but that's just sort of my come from with this universe. And I think it's a lot older than what we're aware of, but also that it's like toroidal field and fractal in nature to where it rejuvenates like cells in our body the way it was put to me rejuvenate every 7 years. The universe in a timeless fashion will redo everything again, and we could say do things in a different way when it redoes it again in a timeless fashion as well. That it's like, how do you measure something that's shapeless, formless, and unbounded? Like in our terms as human beings, even though we are smart, we've been building and working extraterrestrially for quite some time. We're quite capable beings, but when you're dealing with this, even a lot of the intelligences, including angelic and Elohim intelligences, there's still mysteries to them, which makes this even more truthful because they don't have an answer to absolutely everything. And so I think on a unbounded state, we probably know it all, is my opinion. But while we've got a pinpoint of awareness in the human body, there's a lot of amnesic stuff going on.
Yeah, right. And that's surely intentional because that's how we have all of the variety of experiences, right? Like if we were all
Yeah.
connected to
Yeah.
source all the time and had awareness of that, we would have one type of experience. And I think, Earth is the space where we get to come and have a different kind of experience. Although I do wonder your thoughts on this idea. A lot of people out there, I think some of this comes through Dolores Cannon's work as well. This idea that Earth is a school, and that we're here to learn stuff. But I mean, you've just said we actually already know everything. There's nothing to learn, which I believe also. So, what do you think is causing those types of narratives? And do you think that narrative is true from a certain perspective, and not from another? Or like, where are people getting that idea from?
I think again it's a case by case basis. I think Dolores is on the mark for a majority of people. It's like if you don't go into a state of individualism and losing the I am to now I me,
Mm,
how do we learn and experience? And this is where the way it was put to me is that we go out within source to experience everything there is and then go back. Now, if you and me have the same experience exactly to a T, there's nothing we're really learning because it's exactly the same. There might be a slight different point of view, but if we all go out and experience very similar things from a complete different point of view, from different social, economic, all different sort of background differences, and come into, let's say, this game with certain things set up in a certain way different from the next man, that is soul evolution. This is where this has all led me to self mastery. This is where I teach mainly that before we go into contact, because I think people need to be better prepared because I've dealt with negative influences before I was really known for all this stuff, getting called to some of the most haunted locations. The huge overlap between the paranormal and extraterrestrial, ultra terrestrial, and spirit interactions, huge overlap because they're using in some cases the same mechanisms to traverse space and time in whatever way that they're interfacing with people. And so when we look at this as a school, I think this is like a universal school that when we're at a certain level, we can leave this universe and create our own universe, which is still, I was shown this, all the other universes that are gods within a huger consciousness, that all these have their own planes and dimensions. I actually had to stop at that state. I couldn't go any further. So I think it's all a school. But that knowledge, instead of reading books, we've got access, yes, to source. Some might call it the Akashic records, what have you, would access to that. But to bring information for that in some ways, it's where we have to go and experience things. That's a book within itself that all have access to on the, we could say, the ethers. So
mhm.
it's a yes and no and case by case sort of scenario again. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I was in a float tank many years ago, and those pods where you go in, you do the sensory
Yeah,
deprivation.
I've done them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's so good, right? And I had this experience many, many years back. So I was in this float tank. I activated my Merkaba light body, and then I got shown exactly what you spoke about. I got shown these waves of sound. There's light that's traveling on top of it, and then as the light intersected with light in specific geometrical patterns, it created form. And they said that the geometry plays a really big role. And don't ask me to go into all the specifics of it because I didn't go that far into the understanding
Mhm.
of it. But just that basic knowing that yes, the universe is made of sound. Yes, light creates matter. Yes, it's the sound and the light working together in these waves of flow that create things. And I think that knowledge, it really flips the head on like decades of science. I mean, you think about the traditional models of like E equals MC squared and things like that, and we look to that as like the be all end all of physics. Maybe not so much today because quantum physics has come out too, and there's a lot of different theories out there now. But I wonder, if we were to really take this sort of channeled or different sources of information to have some level of validity, what we could do with that from a scientific perspective. Do you know of any, science out there that might have proven this in a way that is very tangible? I mean, you said that scientists know this now, but at what level have they understood this?
So the stuff that I point to at times is that now that if we smash two photons together, momentarily we get matter. There was
Right.
another frequency which I believe was 432. Don't quote me, that I think it was at Stanford Research Institute, that when
Mhm.
they hit that, there was light appear momentarily.
Oh, wow.
Now, what I will say is that I've had permission in the past from Dr. Emoto's son with the Emoto Peace Project, where we know that our thoughts and the written word, when you freeze water, it will, if it's a positive word, get a geometric effect, very similar to a snowflake. If it's a negative word, it's distorted, which is what we get between the ascension phases. We go into a disordered state before we get order again, chaos, order. It's part of, we could say, the self-mastery experience, how we deal with that chaos. The other perspective of this as well is Michael Lee Hill. Now, he's a well-known experiencer. He's one of the people with the creatine situation that was on UFO Hunters, I think around 2007, where he was tested, and he's got footage, great footage. He's a great person, great guitarist as well. Now, he had an experience with Crop Circle and a download experience, if I've got this correct, where basically he got information to get the A note from a guitar at 432, sent it to cymatics, and when they did it, or cymoscope, which using cymatics, where you've got the tone going through a dish of water, when that was played, and this is repeatable, there is perfect geometric patterns with even binary code within it. If we take this to another level now, which I love, this gentleman, I don't know him, but his work is so off its head that it makes me look normal. JJ Hertak. He's a professor that was taken for 3 days physically, where I believe half of the experience he was in his human vessel, then after that he was in an ascended state. A lot of what JJ Hertak wrote about, which this book, The Keys of Enoch, the Book of Knowledge, is basically like a Bible in and of itself. And I would say my best-selling series, the Shiji material, would be a very minimal stepping stone to that, but is very in line with that from my own experiences. He's talking and using terms that they're using now, that a lot of what he said back then was off the wall is now science fact, to where he's got the Academy for Future Sciences, and also he's spoken to the UN. He's done a lot of stuff where he was doing stuff with resonance in the Egyptian pyramids going back a long time. My point with this is that I've been taken in beings who are in their Merkaba, as well as mine has been initiated and activated, but this also goes into frequency. So for those that are unaware, the Merkaba is two opposing tetrahedrons, basically like pyramids, three-sided on each side, four if you include the bottom. And it's our ascension body. It's our photon body that now, when they've even photographed the photon for the first time, I saw through David Wilcock with a person at a university in Poland, took a few years ago, it looks like the Templar Knight's cross. But if you make it and invert it three-dimensionally, you now basically get a Merkaba. All right. So the photon has different densities, and I believe, and it's light. That's our light body. That's our image of God, source, creator on one level, on one frequency. Because I was also shown the universe made up of countless dodecahedrons, and everything was within a dodecahedron. I think depending on your frequency will depend on the makeup geometrically structured from light. It will depend on the realm, because each realm is vibrating at its own frequency, which means it's got different building blocks, which is the light blueprint, which is geometry. But when you get into the Merkaba, and I've seen beings go from from physical into their Merkaba into their rainbow body, they dissolve into what we could say is universal consciousness, and through thought navigate where they pop back out at. And I am convinced at this time we don't go anywhere. We're on a treadmill in God's mind. Once you understand the mechanics of the Merkaba and the rainbow body, going up to and including Namkai Norbu, who's no longer with us, who was a Tibetan Dzogchen master, it's written that in 13 star systems, the rainbow body's being taught. To where if you go to 1411 with the translated word of Buddha, they're talking about transparent spheres, pearls in the sky, where the Tibetan gods come and visit man. Now, there are craft, there are beings in their Merkaba that can project a craft that can be tangible, that you can walk onto, that you can be on, that you can touch. There are physical nuts and bolts crafts. But when you get to a certain level, you are now through consciousness able to bilocate or teleport consciously, and you don't even need a craft at that level. And it's done through understanding geometry, which blows my mind that if you even look at the Star of David as the Merkaba, through the ancient cultures, that keeps reappearing. They had some knowledge and understanding of what that Merkaba, let's say the Star of David, is. And I think in the geometry and understanding frequency, even Nikola Tesla said that with frequency, I understand 369. I think if we understand geometry and vibration and consciousness in how it's connected to that, that is where science is going to find a whole new ballpark, a whole new domain that I think is ancient knowledge and original knowledge, but we're refining. And I think it's through that, through the geometry.
Yeah, wow. Wow. That's a lot you just packed into there. I love it.
I can
So,
go on for hours, literally. Sorry, yeah, I go on these rants, but it's just bang.
oh no, don't be sorry. I love this stuff. This is great. My journey started off with a lot of geometry as well back in I think 2015, when I first connected with the Arcturian Council of Light, who I didn't know then were Arcturians, but now I know we're Arcturians. And they shared with me a set of sacred geometries, and they told me it was actually for DNA activation. So again, that's a topic that I'm very fascinated in whenever someone brings in a different perspective on that, because it's like something that I have some awareness of already. So yeah, I guess the next pivot that I want to make here is I want to go into just sharing some of your very tangible experiences. Now, I know you have a sanctuary where you have groups and you're obviously out on some land which is far away from the city lights. Tell us about a couple of the experiences that you've had while you've been out there.
Uh, it's a daily thing, and it's great that look, I'm somebody that's had hundreds of people in my home over the years experience stuff before moving here. But to
Mhm.
have just the public coming and experiencing it themselves, it's really cool. One of the most amazing experiences I have ever had, it was actually by myself, but I've got to tell it because it's just off the wall in terms of even for me with what I've experienced, and it just shows how things, just when you think you've got an understanding, the rug gets pulled out. And yeah, we've got the photos, we've got the videos, we've got orbs appearing a few foot off the ground that's on video here, witnesses, we've got the Geiger counters, the EMF detectors going off to that, we've got daytime craft, nighttime craft, we've got bangs in their orbs just floating along the ground, all these different things. And we go through techniques of clearing to make sure that what we're connecting with is in line with the awakening healing of humanity. And I also go into self-mastery, again, being trained in different disciplines with yoga, meditation, hypnotherapy, NLP, Qigong, Yigong, and the list goes on. So there's a lot going on here, but what took me aback was it'd be nearly 2 years ago now, around this time, I had a dream. I sound like Martin Luther King now, but I was actually having a dream. And in this dream, I was in a rainbow realm. Now, it was blackness everywhere, but it was like ribbons of rainbow light, like as if I was in a pool of rainbow energy. And there was this gentleman there with a white beard and white hair. He was bronze, had a golden chest piece and a white robe. And he had a staff and he said, just think of somewhere you will appear there. Remember, it's like, remember how to do this. And so I started to think of places because I've been physically taken off world. I've written about that in one of my books and allude to this experience as well. And so we started to appear different places just at a thought, just here, there. It was just a thought. And then all of a sudden, I'm back in this realm with him where we started. And there is a golden temple and a paved golden walkway up to it. And we walk up there and we get into this section of this temple complex where there's different saints, sages, and masters. And they look surprised when we walked in. I think a little bit with me, but more with who I was with. And at that point, I woke up physically now to a golden tablet about this big that was levitating about 5 foot off the ground, and my whole room was lit up and there was script on it. I haven't found the script to this day. And at that time, rainbow energy, the same rainbow energy from the dream state, now I'm physically awake, I'm awake in this body, is the rainbow energy is coming from that tablet into my consciousness. And I mean, I'm like ecstasy times 100 screaming out as it's doing it. And it happened for maybe 5, 10 seconds, what have you. I had to turn away and I closed my eyes. And at that time, it stopped. I opened my eyes back up and the room still lit up because there's no light on in the room. But now there is, you know what I mean? Like I went to bed without a light on, the room still lit up, turned back. This tablet's there with script flashing a million miles an hour with the rainbow energy coming out into my consciousness. Happened for another 5, 10, 15 seconds and it imploded on itself. And I'm sitting there in complete darkness and I get up and turn the light on and come into the lounge room. That experience, besides merging with Source, being on extraterrestrial crafts in angelic and ascended beings, Orbs, Merkabas, being taken off world, that to me, I'm still unpacking because the information and guidance and revelations from that is things that I can't even convey in a linear way, let alone in concepts that are human to translate what I've gained from that experience that's unraveling to this day. And that's where I say, like, the extraterrestrial thing's all great and ultra terrestrials and all that, but like this, I still don't understand. And anyone that thinks they do, good for them. But when you're living this and you're experiencing it, like at a level like whatever this is that I don't understand, there was so much transfer of knowledge of things to do with our transdimensional nature that I think it's dormant within me, and I think it's dormant within each single one of us. But when we are at a certain level of consciousness, I think these types of things we're planned to experience as awakening seeds, as conduits to get to that next, path on the footpath, that journey that's never ending, if that makes sense. And so that's probably been the most hardcore thing at the sanctuary. I've been here nearly 4 years that I've experienced.
Yeah, wow. Wow. That's
It's like,
incredible.
well, to me, it's like, what do you do with that? It's almost like a stray jacket thing, calling the stray jacket and the cat team like this is, and I get that, but I've experienced what I've experienced, and so have people around me experienced similar things, um, and it really gets you thinking. Like when you do understand that even the extraterrestrials have these beings that they're interfacing with as well, it
Mhm.
shows how we're all on this in a network of soul evolution that's entwined with each other, that's for each other, that's part of that oneness, but it keeps it never dull is the best way I could probably explain that.
Yeah. You mentioned this temple space. What is it? Where is it? Can anyone access it?
Oh, look, to me, anyone can access anything, though the way it's been explained to me in the past is the only thing that determines if you can or not now is your level of consciousness.
Yeah.
I've got no idea where this temple is. It had like an obelisk, a pyramid in front of it, and it was like two dome complexes on each side of it. And there was a walkway that went on a slant to get up into where the section where I went to. So yeah, it's like two domes, a pyramid, and then yeah, a huge obelisk behind that pyramid. And I don't know. I've come across some stuff that people have revealed to me. One lady showed me some script that was extremely close, and I'm thinking possibly it's angelic script. I've looked everywhere, and there's nothing 100% like it anywhere. And again, that realm, it was as tangible as you and I feel sitting together. You talking to me now like this, but it was nothingness. And then I think if you go into Thor and Odin and all that, like I've only seen one of those Avengers movies with Chris Hemsworth in, I think like one. So I don't watch television or anything, but it got me where there was like this rainbow pathway that they would travel galactically or from realm to realm or what have you. And it just got me thinking like it was so similar to the vastness of blackness that was so beautiful and endless and timeless. But yet this ribbon of rainbow energy was just everywhere. And again, it's like I've experienced once you break down from even the like in the darkness is everything. But we've got to remember that, like the way I've explained it, as we spoke about, was everything is consciousness and awareness, which goes into a vibratorial state, which creates, light, which creates matter. And that obviously still is some form of projection, just like this realm is a projection, because it's constructed from, we could say, that matrix that we're speaking about. So even though that seemed so awesome, and it was, that's still an illusion as well, as real as it is, just like this. And it's not belittling this experience or that experience, but it just, these are the things that I sit back and contemplate and think about, at night time, instead of watching telly or anything, just these types of things, because there's a yearning of experiencing that again, which I know we do when we go in between lives. But also, what's the fruit from it, which is what I want to leave people with any conversation, is what's the fruit in the experience, because it can be very unproductive and de-evolving when we get obsessed with these things, the paranormal, UFO, spirituality, if we don't have a come from and an angle to come of gleaning the fruit. Now, I say it's almost like, instead of doing this, I want to know, but I want it this way, where there's got to be a surrendering, because I believe why I get the results that I do, which is why I've traveled the world doing initiating contact and people experiencing it with me. I believe the reason why it's so effective is because when I set the stage to experience this, I set the stage to experience what I or the group need to be a better person, to be of service and bring love and joy into our life, which may mean a physical experience, an astral experience, an energetic experience. It could even be just you having a mirror experience of your own crap to purge and release and heal and uplift, going to that next stage. And that's why I think I get the results, is it's what's needed. And so the fruit is what I look for in any experience. But even with that, the Rainbow Realm experience, I think I know what the fruit is, which is the knowledge, which I'm still trying to unpack. But at the end of the day, it's just an experience. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
Like what do you honestly do with that? Like, it's just like with an ET encounter. Unless you're in coherent consciousness connection with them on a regular basis, you know who they are, you know your connection to them, you're assisting humanity with their backup, this, that, the other, which is in a lot of cases. When it gets to these far out things, I'm sure there's a fruit. There's probably a friggin' fruit salad bowl sitting there with, that much fruit, but I don't understand it at this time. And so I think the thing that I would like people to think about, even with this conversation today, with any spiritual teacher, listening to your show, listening to other shows, reading books, whatever it is, their own experiences, what's the fruit in the experience? That's what it comes down to. And sometimes that fruit might not come for 3, 4, 5, 10. There's been stuff 20 years it's taken me to understand, that I finally go, I get it. But it took 20 years, but I wasn't at the level of consciousness to understand it. That's why I didn't understand it. I wasn't there.
Mm.
I'm still not there on so many other levels, but I wasn't there to understand that specific thing. So the fruit, I think, is where it all lays.
Yeah, I think you've just hit the nail on the head. And, we're all about integration here as well, and about not just listening to, people like you and I have a conversation, but let's go and actually experience it. Let's go and try it out ourselves. I think sometimes people get very caught up, and I see this a lot in the ufology end of the spectrum, more so than the spiritual end of the spectrum, but it's like, it's all about just getting the information, but not actually having an experience of it. I went up to someone who's been researching UFOs for 30 years and said, hey, I can help you connect. And they were like, oh, no, thanks. I was like, what do you mean? You spent 30 years researching this stuff and I tell you I can teach you and you don't want to do it? So I think what we're moving into is sort of the evolution of humanity. I mean, that's when you say the fruit, that's what I think of. That's the first thing that
Yeah.
comes to my mind is we're taking these experiences, whether it's an isolated or whether it's a group of experiences or an ongoing contact, and we're taking that and what are we doing with that? Are we in some way assisting, serving, helping, leading, growing, evolving, all of these wonderful things? And how does that impact humanity in the long term? And I think to do that, at some point, I would say each person needs to make it their own mission and their own business to go out and actually try it for themselves. Not to just listen on some video or documentary or have it out there as an information source, but to really bring that into the heart and say, I'm ready to evolve. I'm ready to experience the consciousness. And I think that's where we're really moving into. So with that said, and I have to say, you're the first person on the show to have this. In the history of the show, we typically have had more interviews, and we haven't really had a lot of actual meditations and experiences. So you get to lead the way in a
Yeah.
more experiential kind of thing for our audience. So could you lead us into a kind of meditation or a transmission that might help people who are just starting out to maybe feel comfortable and confident and to have an experience for themselves?
Definitely. So, what I would recommend in this case is I'm going to go through a clearing technique and then connecting with the heart space, which is connecting with our orb of light. Now, we do have many different geometric templates. So, we've got the chakras, you've got the dantians, you've got, yes, the meridian system within the physical vessel, the acupuncture points, but we've also got the Merkaba and like even like mandalas. There's so many different templates as well as the plutonic solid aspect. I prefer, and I go into these techniques extensively. I've even got Merkaba meditations and rainbow body ones on YouTube. But when you work with your orb of light, you're working with it all. And it's very simplistic. So, in that stage, when you hit that, is where you could invite, if you want to invite and initiate a form of contact, whether it's a uh, telepathic communication, a sign from your spirit team that they're with you on this journey, to get some form of acknowledgement, some form of tangibility. Sometimes, like I say, when you've got faith, none of that really matters. But for people starting out, we do want tangibility. We want to see something. We want to experience something. But as I said before, if people just set the expectation with what we're about to do, to experience what they need to, with where they're at, to be a better person, be of service, and have love in their life, that's the frequencies, not just extraterrestrials, but the saint sages and masters from all cultures on and off world want to tap into, because it's a raised frequency vibration. It's not low, it's not dense, and it's not structured in such a way that's controlling. So yeah, I just invite everyone just to get relaxed and just back up straight or lay down and relax if you want. And just start out by thinking of a color or a feeling that's therapeutic, revitalizing, uplifting. Use your imagination, which is creation, if you'd like to. And just breathe that energy in through the nose. And as you breathe out through the mouth, just release any tension around the eyes, the cheeks, the jaw, the neck, the mouth. Let it go out through the breath and just relax. And again, breathe in that beautiful, loving, blissful energy. And this time out with any tension in the shoulders, the arms, the back, the stomach. Let it go out through the breath and relax. And again, breathe in that beautiful energy. And out with any tension from the hips down to the toes. And what I invite you to do now is just keep breathing in that beautiful, loving energy, but breathe that loving energy back out. So you're recycling in and out of the breath that loving, joyful, blissful energy. And I'm just going to go into a clearing. So I just call upon our guides, our higher self, God Source Creator. We ask that any cords, attachments, implants, parasitic thought forms, blockages, anything in our field or environment that isn't in line with the awakening healing of humanity, the earth, and our missions and journeys, it's now to be dissolved and escorted to its perfect place and to go in peace. Thank you. Just keep breathing in and out that beautiful, loving energy. I now just call for source energy just to go throughout the molecular structure of the body, the layers of the light body, balancing out, rectifying, enhancing, and uplifting energies where needed to run optimal efficiency. You might feel a temperature change, a shift in energy around you. It could be goosebumps, hair standing up. And from this point, I ask now that we're sealed off in our own orb of light, immune from any outside influences, and that only our main teacher and guides and higher self and source can come into this space to assist with guidance, direction, service to others, abundance, peace, love, and joy, and a balance of mind, body, and spirit. So from this space, with intention, again, with imagination, which is creation, or through feeling, depending on how one operates. Connect to the heart space. You may even want to put your hand over your heart. You don't have to. It can be a focal point for those starting out. And just breathe into the heart. Breathe out of the heart. Breathe into the heart. Breathe out of the heart. And just connect with the heart space. And you may start to feel that space, or if you're visual, you may start to see a flickering light, a spinning and swirling little ball of light. And just connect with this. This is the essence on a light aspect of who you are. The core of the light body is where the heart space is. The heart is the first organ to manifest in the womb. It's the core of the light body. It's got a neuron network. The heart is where it all lays. And as you connect with this heart space, whether through visually expanding this energy or through feeling with intention or imagination, slowly connect with it in that light, the heart space, and expand it, let's say, to the size of a baseball. Slowly expand it to the size of a basketball. And just keep expanding this light until you're sitting and reconnecting and acknowledging and reuniting with your orb of light. You may start to rock back and forth a little bit, spin. This is just the energy bands of the orb, the light body, which includes the Merkaba. This is just the physical effects of the rocking back and forth, of feeling that on an energetic level. And through intention, just explode this energy out like a solar flare and suck it back into the peripheral around the physical vessel. See it bright as whatever color you're seeing it as, spinning and swirling and powered up. Connecting with the light body. And connecting to the mind behind the mind that we're all a part of, that one consciousness that encompasses all consciousness. As a conduit to this, think about how you're perceiving my voice right now. Yes, scientifically, the sound waves are hitting the little hairs in the ear and they're reverberating and you can hear me. But how are you perceiving that you're hearing me on a conscious level? And how are you observing that you're perceiving me, which is the mind behind the mind, which is God's mind, which is your mind? Those that hear, hear. Those that see, see. We're all where we're at, but if you can understand that, that is the one mind that we are all a part of, that we all come from, that we're all connected to, and that we all go back to, and we're always with at the higher levels of who we are, the unbounded, shapeless, formless aspect of us, which all of us beautiful beings are. Just take notice of any thoughts, any ideas, epiphanies, concepts, which can be transmissions, directions in life, resolutions. And when you're ready, only when you're ready, just move your fingers and your toes and slowly open your eyes and come back to the body.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. And it's always so nice when we move from talking about something to experiencing something. And also, sometimes it's so simple. I mean, there was nothing crazy in your session today. It was just really simple, really straightforward, such an easy way for people to drop in. So I love that.
No, thank you. And I think that's what it comes down to. Even as you know, a lot of people yourself that have been in this community for years, I just notice on a regular basis when people get back to the simplistic techniques and things they were using years ago that they stopped using because it was just so simple and they found other tools. Sometimes getting back to the basics can be extremely effective, and we tend to forget the simplistic things. So, um, yeah, not that all of it is, but I think work with where you're at and all the tools we've got at our disposal, use what feels right and what you're drawn to. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it won't be effective. It can sometimes be exactly what we need. So, yeah, I just hope it's helpful for yourself and others that have joined in on it.
Of course. Thank you so much. So, Pete, before we wrap up today, I'd love for you to share a little bit about any upcoming projects you have, books in the works, and also share about your sanctuary and where people can find you.
Yeah, so the sanctuary's at jayasanctuary.com, Jaya sanctuary.com. We've got a lot of events coming up from Sky Watchers to CE5 half day workshops to 2 day intensive workshops to remote viewing workshops to the Lightworkers and Ascension workshop, self mastery workshops. So there's quite a lot of workshops from now to the middle of the year, and I'll have a little break and go to America for a bit, and then there'll be a whole lot of other workshops to finish off the year that I'll bring out in about winter time. So yeah, at the moment it's really just lots of gardening, lots of time on the land and doing practices, and I do appointments as well that people can look at on the website. But yeah, mainly it's just teaching people these days, and that's where my joy and bliss is. So yeah, but no, thank you for having me on. It's been a great time, Eesha.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your service to the world. And to those of you tuning in, if you liked the episode, please give us a like, share, comment, tell all your friends about it because we're on the massive brink of this massive paradigm shift and it's up to all of us to get involved. So thank you for tuning in and we'll see you guys next time on First Contact.